Hi friends, this is your Govindraj. Welcome back to the channel. This video we are going to talk about this Occupational Safety, Health and Working Conditions Code Karnataka rules which are recently notified. And on Occupational Safety, Health and Working Conditions Code, in this channel I have given you already many highlights which are key highlights. We talked about employment of women, we talked about contract labor, and we also talked about annual leave with wages and many more information. And if you have not watched these videos, you can actually watch these videos and get to know more about it. And this video I'm going to give you certain highlights of these Karnataka rules on this code. And before we get into the highlights, I have to give you certain preliminary information. See, if you look at the rules, as the capacity of appropriate government, the state will have certain powers, and also as a state government, the code has given certain powers to frame rules on certain specified matters. Using this power under section 133 and 135, the Karnataka government as an appropriate government under the capacity of state government has framed the rules. And if you look at the structure and also the framework, the central government also has retained certain exclusive power to frame rules which have national application. Of course, the central government also has retained certain powers to frame the rules on state specific topics. Of course, they are required to consult the state government, and this is basically to bring the uniformity in the rules across the country. And if you look at these Karnataka rules, these are notified on 4th April 2022 and which are gazetted on 25th April 2022. The public and the interested parties will have 45 days of time to send their comments and suggestions and also objections. After that, the state government will decide probably on a consultative approach, and once these are finalized, these will come into force once the codes are implemented. And also on specifically on mines and docks, the central government is alone has the power to frame the rules. And coming back to certain applicability rules, see, I talked about in the previous videos that the OSH and WC code, there is an establishment definition which covers basically whatever the commercial activity is there. Any kind of establishment is coming under this code. And if you look at these specific rules, Karnataka rules, they say these are applied to any establishment in relation to which the appropriate government is the state government. But if you look at the provisions, they are majorly focused on factories, plantations, motor transport undertaking, and industrial premises for BD and cigar work, audiovisual production, building and other construction work. We call it as BOCW. And we also there are also applicability or rules related to establishment of employing contract laborers and the rules related to international interstate migrant workers, and these are the rules are available. Of course, if you look at the code also covers mines, dock workers, working journalists, and newspaper establishment and sales promotion employees. So the Karnataka rules have not talked about on these establishments or on these employees, because the central government has retained the power to prescribe the rules, and you have to look for central government rules on these provisions. You may also wonder one more question: how about shops and establishment? Because the OSH and WC code, the establishment definition is going to be applicable wherever the commercial activity is there, where 10 or more workers are employed. Of course, these rules are not going to talk about anything on this. In the future, we have to see whether these Shops and Establishment Act is going to be modified, or there are certain common rules from the central government perspective. So the future will talk about this applicability of shops and establishment. And let me take you through certain key changes which are brought, and also certain key highlights which are brought in the Karnataka rules. See, first thing is that digitization is set to play an important role in the registration, licensing and compliance going ahead. If you look at in Karnataka, there are two official portals. One is Karmika Spandana and E-Surakshate. These are named as official portals of the government, and these portals will play a major role in online services of the government. Of course, currently these are already in place, and further these are going to be strengthened because now they are named as official portals of the government. And if you look at another change is we have actually these standards called Bureau of Indian Standards. There's a national building code and international standard, including ILO standards. See, we used to refer whenever is required, and we didn't find anything which is linked to the law. But now, wherever required, the rules are have prescribed that these standards have to be applied. This is one of the important key change which you need to know. And of course, the plan approval related licensing of factories, these are all continued, but going ahead, the electronic submissions and approvals will play a major role. Of course, currently these are also implemented, but going ahead, these are going to be more and more useful and applicable. And with related to requirement of stability certificate for factory building, and also the requirement of fresh stability certificate once in 5 years is also continued. But there are rules are made where these people who are going to issue this stability certificate have to be recognized from the Department of Factories and Boilers. The specific rules are brought in this regard. And also a single online application for registration, renewal, amendment of any kind of establishment. It could be motor transport, it could be factory, it could be plantation. So these are everything put together. One single application is brought. This is one of the good development. And of course, the existing employers are also required to update the registration particulars on this official portal within 6 months from the date on which the codes comes into place. So this is, of course, this provision is also there in the code, and now the rules have also prescribed. And this annual health examination at the free of cost for workers who are above 45 years and who are specifically employed in factory, BOCW, BD and cigar work, plantation, motor transport undertaking. So these employers have to provide free health examination at least once in a year for the people who are above 45 years. So this provision was also there in the code. Now this is also prescribed in the rules. And there are certain specific rules related to annual health examination which are related to hazardous process and dangerous operations. But beyond that, as an exclusive provision, this is a common provision is provided in this case also. Going ahead, friends, this requirement of appointment letter and experience certificate are prescribed, and these are also made as mandatory. The employers are required to comply about this. And with related to notice of accidents and dangerous occurrence, these provisions are retained. But there is one change, important change. The current deadline of 24 hours from the initial 48 hours, now this is reduced to 12 hours. This important change you can note down. And the provisions related to safety committee, these are also entirely retained. But one important change, which is basically 3 representative of contract workers and women workers, and of course wherever applicable should be part of the committee. So this is one of the change which you will note down when you read these rules. And of course the provisions related to safety officers are also retained, but there is a new requirement that these appointment of safety officers by the chief inspector cum facilitator is required to be ratified from the chief inspector. So this is one of the change which has been brought in the rules. And the proposed rules, the Karnataka rules, do not provide any scope for 4-day work pattern, because in the previous video I already talked about how this is going to work, and the appropriate government is required to adopt these rules. Then only in the state this possibility is possible. But now, because the state government has not adopted, if in the final rules these amendments are not brought, that 4-day work provisions may not be available in Karnataka. So that you need to note down. And this overtime related wages at the twice the rate of wages, if any worker works for more than 9 hours in any day or for more than 48 hours in any week, these provisions are continued. But there are few changes. One is rounding off 15 to 30 minutes work to 30 minutes minimum, and also in case more than 30 minutes, then 1 hour overtime is required to be provided. And of course calculation of overtime wages using the 26 days criteria is brought. Of course this was not very specific. Now this has become very specific. And with related to permission for overtime work for exceptional press of work, there is no permission is required, but daily, weekly and monthly ceilings are maintained intact, and the maximum ceiling per quarter is now stands at 125 hours. Going ahead, friends, there are certain rules which are brought on safety audit in factories by the external auditor once in 2 years. See, these provisions were already there in Karnataka because in 2016 these rules were made, but according to my information, these are not strictly enforced. And these similar rules are now incorporated in the Karnataka rules, and the employer of a factory where hazardous processes or dangerous operations are carried on, they have to mandatorily get the safety audit done by a safety auditor, external safety auditor. And also non-hazardous factories employing 250 or more workers, they also have to get this external safety audit done once in 2 years. These provisions have been incorporated in the rules. And of course, this external audit is also mandatory as and when any changes are brought to manufacturing process. So this requirement has already been brought, and these provisions related to qualification and the standards of audit, certification of external audit, these are also brought in the rules. See, they cannot simply employ someone for an external audit, because these auditors have to be authorized and certified by the department. Then only you can ask these auditors to audit your establishment from the safety point of view. And of course, the employer is required to file compliance report on the observations made by the safety auditor. So these provisions are also available. And I gave you a certain key highlight. There are many points to talk about it, but if I go on talking, then this will become a lengthy video, and of course you will not have any interest to proceed if you don't have a time. And at the last, let me tell you, your compliance will not complete even if you comply the state rules, because I already talked about there are national standards related to safety, health and welfare provisions are going to be prescribed by the central government in line with the sections 18, 23 and 24. And there are certain exclusive power which are applicable to entire national level, and the central government also has an exclusive power to frame rules on mines and docks, and also creech related topics. So therefore you have to keep watch of central rules and national standards. Then you have to prepare your own compliance checklist for proper compliance of the provisions of the code. So therefore friends, you have to considering all these things, so your checklist have to be complete. So friends, so far we talked about this Karnataka rules and certain information on the code. We talked about it, and in future I'm going to talk about more and more on these topics and more information. So therefore, if you have not subscribed the channel, please do subscribe. And if this video has added knowledge to your knowledge base, and please do share and also like the video. And also, in case you are interested to send some comments, please use the comment section and send me comments. Until then, I will sign off and see you in the next video and with new information, friends.